What if you could look at a country, not as a place on a map, but as a single living mind? Today, we're diving into a really powerful idea that reframes entire nations as giant neural networks. And what it tells us about our world right now is pretty mind-blowing.
So, let's kick things off with a puzzle. The data points to something really strange happening by 2025. You've got the US, where social cohesion, the very glue holding society together, has just tanked, down by a massive 64%. But then you look at the UK, and it's actually bouncing back. Now, both countries got hit by the same global pressures. So why is one breaking apart while the other is getting strong?
And that right there is the big mystery we're going to unravel. How on earth can two incredibly similar modern societies be on such wildly different tracks? The answer, it turns out, forces us to look at them in a way you probably never have before. To crack this case, we need a totally new tool. We need a way to see a society not just as people and buildings, but as a giant biological brain. This whole idea comes from a framework called CAMS, and it is a game changer.
So what does that actually mean? Well, at its core, the CAMS framework says we can stop arguing about a nation's health and, start actually measuring it. It treats a whole society like a brain, where the big institutions are like different lobes. And by tracking the signals between them, we can get something that looks a lot like a real-time brain scan of an entire country.
So, what are these lobes of the societal brain? The model breaks it down into 8 core parts, or nodes, that are basically the building blocks of any complex society, whether it's ancient Rome or the US today. You've got the government, the army, the culture, capital, labor, the whole shebang. The health of the entire system, the entire brain, comes down to how well these 8 parts are connected and talking to each other.
Okay, so if those are the parts of the brain, what makes them act so differently in different countries? And this right here is the crucial clue. See, in our own brains, we have chemicals, neuromodulators, that change how everything functions. In a society, the key neuromodulator is stress.
Now, this idea is completely radical. We tend to think of societal stress, political fights, economic anxiety, as just a bad thing, a symptom of decay. But this model says, no, that's not right. Stress is just information. It's how a society thinks. The key isn't to get rid of stress, it's all about how the system processes it.
And it turns out there are 2 totally different ways that can happen. On one hand, stress can be like a good workout for your muscles. It's tough, but it forces you to adapt and makes the whole system stronger. That's called inhibitory stress. That's what the model says is happening in the UK. But on the other hand, stress can be like a seizure. It just overwhelms everything, breaks connections, and amplifies chaos. And that's excitatory stress. That's the key to what's going on in the US.
Okay, so now that we have that framework in our heads, we can go back to that original puzzle and see what the data shows is going on with what the model calls the great rewiring of America's neural network.
And the first vital sign is, well, it's stark. The overall health of the US system is sitting at 2.69. Now, why does that number matter? Because decades of historical data show that any time a society drops below 2.5, that's a critical failure point. America is standing on incredibly thin ice.
And if you thought that was bad, the next number is even more alarming. This thing called coherence asymmetry. It basically measures how much the different parts of society agree on reality. It's like, is the government seeing the same world as the economy and the culture? A healthy society has a low score. The danger zone starts at 0.4. America's score is 4.0. That's 10 times the danger level. It's a quantifiable sign that the system is fundamentally broken.
And this table right here, this is the smoking gun. Just look at the difference. In the UK, all 8 of those societal nodes are inhibitory. They're wired to absorb stress and keep things stable. But the US network, it's completely flipped. 7 of the 8 nodes are now excitatory, which means instead of absorbing stress, they amplify it. They pour gasoline on the fire. The whole system is hyperactive, with only the military still acting as a brake.
So what we're actually seeing, what this data is screaming, isn't just political polarization, it's a neural phase transition. The entire operating system of America's social brain has literally rewired itself, from a stable state that contains stress to a hyperactive one that magnifies it. This explains everything: the fragmentation, the anger, the feeling that the whole system is dangerously unstable.
So we've diagnosed the problem, but this is where the model gets really interesting. It's not just an MRI of the present. It becomes a kind of GPS for the future, giving us a potential map of the road ahead.
See, based on looking at tons of historical patterns, the model has identified a predictable 6-stage path that societies tend to follow when they break down. And with that extreme internal division, that coherence asymmetry score, the United States is right at the end of stage 1, and it's barreling towards stage 2, a stress cascade, which is where that hyperactivity could set off a chain reaction of failures across the whole system.
So how long do we have before that cascade could really kick in? The model gives a pretty sobering answer, a warning window of about 18 to 24 months. That's the critical period to try and cool the system down before its current path becomes much, much harder to change.
But, and this is the most important takeaway of all, this isn't about predicting some inescapable doom. It's actually the exact opposite. It's kind of like Isaac Asimov's dream of psychohistory in his science fiction novels, a way to understand the currents of history. This is a map of probabilities. It's a civilizational GPS that lets us see the danger ahead of time so we can actually make conscious choices to steer in a different direction. It doesn't write our fate. It gives us the power to choose it.
So, for the first time, we might actually have a real, data-driven map of how our societies work, right down to the neural level. It shows us where we are. It shows us the possible roads ahead. And that leaves us with the one question that every civilization at a crossroads has to face. We have the map. Are we going to choose to read it?